so welcome back to my channel. It's Quinlan, and this time I'm bringing you guys another reading vlog, but this time about Chain of Gold. Woo! So I know this vlog comes maybe a little bit later than you guys expected because I thought I was gonna finish last weekend after I finished reading The Infernal Devices, but unfortunately I didn't get to it until basically this weekend. So it is currently April 20th and I am done with Chain of Gold, so I'm going to give you guys a quick non-spoiler review just in case you haven't read it, and then we're gonna jump into the actual reading vlog. To be honest, I kind of struggled with this book in the beginning, especially with connecting with the characters. This definitely isn't a spoiler, but if you read this book, you'll know that you get introduced to a lot of characters at the beginning of the book, and for me, it was really hard to kind of keep track of everybody, and as someone who really values characters as like kind of the primary aspect of the book that I really enjoy and that really draws me in, it made it really difficult to kind of connect with the book when I couldn't really connect with the characters and keep them straight in my head. It just felt very confusing, especially in the beginning. But as the book kind of continued on, I ended up falling in love with it because we definitely narrowed our focus into our main characters. And I definitely felt more connected to especially like Cordelia, who I would say is kind of our main character in some ways. And I just had a lot of fun overall with this book. I don't know if I liked it more or less than The Infernal Devices. I guess I would kind of have to wait and see because obviously this is just the first book in the series, and so I feel like obviously with a whole series you get to know the characters more, so hopefully with this trilogy I'll really get to know the characters and fall in love with them even more in the later books. But I feel like this was a really strong start for sure. I really enjoyed it. I would highly recommend if you haven't read it already. I know I'm a little bit late kind of on the train of reading Chain of Gold, but I definitely enjoyed it a lot. I do feel like it's interesting because Cassandra Clare keeps writing books obviously set kind of in the same Shadowhunter world, but she does find ways to kind of make them unique and not feel repetitive at all. Like, I feel like a lot of our character relationships all feel very unique, and the plot felt very unique, and it didn't feel like we were reusing it. And I also enjoyed kind of getting to see like Edwardian England, which was just really interesting. And I gotta be honest, I'm kind of really into this historical setting, and I think I might end up picking up some more like historical fiction books later on in the month just because I've really been enjoying this kind of historical setting I've been on. So yeah, that's kind of my non-spoilery thoughts. So if you guys want to be spoiled, make sure to keep watching, and if not, I'll see you guys with my next video. So bye! Hey guys, so if all goes to plan, you guys should have just watched my non-spoiler review of Chain of Gold, but now we're gonna delve into the spoilers. So if you haven't read Chain of Gold, please don't continue watching unless you want to be spoiled. Okay, so now that they're gone, before I actually get into the spoilers, I want to give you guys some context. So first of all, I'm coming to you guys from the past, so I haven't finished Chain of Gold yet. I'm only 87 pages through, so obviously not very far, and if you watched my last reading vlog, you'll know that I kind of just talked about my general thoughts as I was reading. But this time I'm gonna dive really into the story and kind of how I think, and I'm gonna try to not ramble on too much because I did film this clip and it ended up being kind of long, and I kind of feel like I can shorten it and not waste y'all's time too much. But I do think I'm gonna get a little bit excited, so this might be a little bit of a longer vlog. We'll see. And also, if you guys watched my last reading vlog, you'll know that I kind of tried to read all 3 Infernal Devices books in 3 days, and I kind of succeeded, kind of didn't. I read them in 72 hours, so you guys can decide for yourself whether or not that counts as 3 days. I counted it as 3 days, but you can be picky if you want to. But basically, I kind of took some liberties, so I finished on Tuesday, and it is now Monday of the next week, and my plan was to finish up Chain of Gold last week, so I'm definitely behind because I am not very far through it at all. I'm only 87 pages through, so I'm definitely kind of slacking in the reading department. I just found so many distractions. I did have some school, although I did have some days off, so I don't have much of an excuse, but I think after kind of forcing myself to read and kind of every waking hour was consumed by reading, I just felt like I needed a break, and I just took way too long. And sometimes it's just a little bit easier to get sucked into like your phone, into watching TV, because I feel like it's a lot more passive than reading a lot of times, because reading you really need to like sit down and kind of get yourself absorbed in the world to really enjoy it. Whereas I feel like when I'm watching TV, at least in my personal experience, it's a little bit more of a passive activity, so it's kind of easy to do that and not read and stuff like that. But anyways, enough of me rambling. I'm gonna get into my real thoughts. I am so excited to go back into this world. I've been totally vibing with this historical setting. I love it. So if you are wondering where I am on page 87, which for context is right after they finished the ball. Everyone just kind of left because Barbara collapsed, and basically we're about to start a flashback about James, but I haven't gotten there yet. So here are my thoughts so far. So initially when I first started the book, I was definitely really confused, because I feel like none of the books we've read so far have had so many characters all at once. And I think maybe part of the reason you are kind of supposed to know these characters is because if you've been following the Infernal Devices, you'll kind of know the children a little bit. Maybe you'll know the family tree. And there's also, I know, a bunch of kind of short stories in the Bane Chronicles and Tales from the Shadowhunter Academy and Ghosts of the Shadow Market. And so a note about that, actually, a little segue. I read the Bane Chronicles. Specifically, I did read the James excerpt right before I started this, because it was actually at the end of Clockwork Princess. So I ended up reading it. I kind of skimmed it, not gonna lie, but I kind of got the gist of it, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But I do feel like I'm missing out on kind of a little, almost like an inside joke that the book has without me, because I didn't read Tales from the Shadowhunter Academy or Ghosts of the Shadow Market, and they do reference their time at the Shadowhunter Academy, and I have a feeling there was probably a short story about like Alistair and the boys at the academy that I'm not really understanding because I haven't read it. So I do feel like I'm kind of missing out on that aspect, but I also didn't really want to buy the other short story kind of novella bind-ups kind of things, because I honestly didn't enjoy the Bane Chronicles that much. I found certain stories enjoyable, but I felt like they just weren't as compelling. And maybe it's because I'm not as attached to Magnus as a character, or maybe because it wasn't like one story, it was just little stories. But I feel like in general, I'm not as big a fan of novellas. Like I really like kind of a longer, more drawn out, cohesive plot line. So I didn't really want to either buy the books and also wait for them to come before I read Chain of Gold. I kind of just wanted to dive right in. So while on the one hand I do kind of feel like I'm missing out, and I do feel like if you haven't read Chain of Gold and you're still sticking around for some reason, I might recommend kind of reading the novella. I don't know. I just feel like I feel almost like a little bit like, oh, like she shouldn't make it. And I know that you don't have to have bought or read those novellas, but I do feel like I'm missing out on a little detail of the story that I wouldn't otherwise have. But anyways, back to what I was originally saying, which was basically that at the beginning of the story, I was honestly just completely confused on all of the characters and kind of how they're related and keeping track of who they are, and especially in relation to each other. At one point, Cordelia mentions that she thinks Lucy might have a crush on, like, I think it's Thomas, I'm not sure, but he's a Lightwood, right? And the more I think about it, the more I think, oh, he's not actually her cousin, but I'm not 100% sure about that, because there are so many Lightwoods and I can't keep track of like who is in which family. And then I know that obviously Lucy and James are cousins with some of the Lightwoods, but I don't know which ones, so that's a little bit confusing. Definitely at the beginning of the book, it was very hard to keep track of the characters, and for some reason, I just feel like this is the first like Shadowhunters book where we've had so many characters introduced to us in such a short amount of time. Like, initially we have kind of Cordelia, Alistair, and their mother, and that's not very hard, but then we meet Lucy and James, and then we already know Will and Tessa, but at the very beginning of the book, we meet 4 boys. And it's very, I know Matthew, but I don't really know where Thomas fits into the family tree, and I don't know where Christopher fits in either. I think he's a Lightwood, but I'm honestly not even sure. It was just so confusing, and I still feel like we keep getting introduced to the characters, especially once we arrive at the ball. Even if they're not kind of in our main set of characters, we still get introduced to all these other characters like Adrienne and all these other people. And even if I don't think they're gonna maybe play a major role in the story down the line, it's just very disconcerting to get introduced to so many characters so soon. And I definitely feel like maybe in Mortal Instruments or in the other series, we kind of got introduced to the characters more slowly. Even though in the Blackthorn family, there are so many Blackthorns, I do feel like it was easier to keep track of them because they're all in one family, and then there's Emma, and then there's Christina, and that's kind of it. And then even like Mark and Helen, you kind of get introduced to them a little bit later, and it's just more straightforward. Whereas this, I just kind of feel like the characters were like thrown at me, and I was totally like at a loss. So I'm still not completely sure who everyone is, but hopefully by the end of the book, I'll kind of have more of a semblance of everything. But my other thoughts are definitely that Lucy being able to see Jessie is gonna play a major role in this story at some point, because I think it has something to do with her demon blood gift that she's gonna have, and I don't know why, but it's definitely gonna play a role. I am interested to know kind of what Jesse is, if he's not like a ghost, but he's not alive and you can touch him, like what exactly that means, like if he's somehow tied still to the world because of something Tatiana did, if he's maybe tied to Grace in some weird way. I'm not really sure, to be honest. I also definitely think that James, his shadow power is gonna play a role. I feel like he's either gonna get control of the shadow, like the shadow power, or he's gonna find a way to kind of like, he's gonna use it to kind of see what is gonna happen, or like where demon energies are collecting or something, because he saw kind of the darkness come to Barbara. So I definitely feel like that's foreshadowing something. But other than that, I also think James and Cordelia are definitely going to end up together, because even just like the way they talk about her, James talks about Cordelia as if she's like a flame and she's like a warm light against the darkness or whatever. And that's definitely going to play a role, especially because he's haunted by shadows. I feel like that's super important. And whenever he talks about Grace, or whenever anybody talks about Grace, they always talk about how she's like ice, and like I know that James kind of mentioned that her feelings are very intense, but I also feel like she's very manipulative, and whatever Tatiana's been like kind of putting in her brain, and regardless of whether or not she has like a legitimate relationship with James, I feel like now that she's in society, she's definitely going to be manipulating him somehow, and that's going to be like really dramatic and come into play later. But yeah, I'm very excited. And also just because whenever Cassandra Clare talks about love in her books, like a good relationship, it's always fire related. When like Will and Tessa and like Emma and Julian, whenever there's like a relationship or like a love interest, they always talk about like fire imagery and like warmth and like feeling like they're burning and like that kind of stuff. They never talk about ice. And so the fact that James and Cordelia kind of have this like warm spark with each other, that definitely to me means their endgame. Even if they don't end up together at the end of this book, I feel like they're endgame. Anyways, I've rambled on for far too long. I'm really sorry. I don't want to take too much of your time, although I do hope you're still watching. So I will check back with you when I'm a little bit more through the book, or when I just have something I feel like is really important to share. Okay, so quick update. First of all, if I sound a little bit weird or lispy, it's because I have my retainer in. Also, my teeth kind of look a little shiny because of my retainer. Also, I changed my location a little bit, so the lighting is a little bit different, so you know, call me professional. But, okay, I have a little anecdote to share that's not really super relevant to the vlog, but I wanted to share anyway because it is about the vlog. And basically, if you were paying attention in my last clip, I mentioned that it was Monday. It is now Friday, April 18th, which you might be thinking, oh, have you finished Chain of Gold? The answer would be no. I've only read a little over 100 pages because last time I think I was on page like 87 and now I'm on page 223. So you might be thinking, wow, you're taking it really slow, and you would be very right. I will get into that in a little bit, but my little fun anecdote was that I filmed a clip last night, so Thursday night, and I was talking about like being behind on reading, and then I was kind of watching / editing Monday's clip, and I realized that I basically repeated everything I said in Monday's clip. So I was feeling very stupid, and I decided instead of editing that out or making you guys watch basically me say the same things twice, I would just go ahead and share basically what I kind of shared last night, but without the repetition. So I have read exactly 0 pages from yesterday, so this is kind of perfect because nothing's changed. As you can tell, I'm a little bit frustrated with my lack of reading progress. But I do feel like there's a reason for that, and to be honest with you, it is because I am not vibing that hard with Chain of Gold. I was vibing so hard with Infernal Devices. If you watched my last vlog, I read the Infernal Devices and I vibed so hard. Part of the reason I was able to finish it so quickly is just because I felt like they were just such good, captivating books, and I was just so drawn into the world, and I fell in love with the characters so much. But I've just not been vibing as hard with Chain of Gold, and I feel like it's a little bit of a chicken and egg situation where I can't tell if I'm not vibing as hard because I have taken so long to read this book, and my reading has been so spread out that I feel like reading that way, it is a little bit maybe disconcerting, and it's a little bit more disconnected, and you don't really get to fall in love with the characters as much because you're reading it so spread out. Or if I'm not reading as much because I'm not vibing with the book as much. I kind of think it's the latter because I'm just having such a hard time, and I know I talked about this in my last clip, but I'm having a really hard time with the sheer amount of characters that there are in this book and how quickly you get introduced to all of them. And I know I mentioned it last clip, but I'm just gonna kind of reiterate it because I just feel like there are so, like, the amount of characters that there were in the Infernal Devices is basically the amount of main characters that are in Chain of Gold. So for a little bit of, I don't know, visual aids, I have this cute little illustration in the front of my book, and these are kind of all of the main characters. And mind you, a lot of these characters are pictured without their siblings. So here is like Lucy and James, and they're like a sibling pair, and Alistair and Cordelia, and they're a sibling pair, but the rest of these characters, they all have other siblings that aren't even pictured. So I do feel like in the Infernal Devices, this many characters were basically living in the Institute, and that was almost like the total amount of characters that we had in almost the entire series. Like, we had our main characters were obviously Will, Jem, and Tessa, but we got introduced to other characters more slowly. Even like Gideon and Gabrielle, we didn't meet them for a long time, and whereas here we are introduced to so many characters so quickly, and not even just like the main families and the main characters and their families. It's like basically the first 100 pages, we end up going to this ball where we meet a ton of people from the Enclave, and it's just so many characters because they're not even people who are like related. Like, it's just a mess. And to be honest with you, I think that's the biggest reason I'm not vibing, and the biggest reason that I'm having a hard time connecting with the characters. So if you're wondering where I am, I'm basically at the part where Cordelia, Matthew, and Anna go to like the salon with all the Downworlders. And I just have this feeling that she wants me to care about like Anna and Matthew and Cordelia, and I just feel like I don't. I care about Cordelia a little bit because she has gotten some more narration time, and I do feel like I maybe know her a little bit better. And I do ship her and James, to be honest, because I'm always a sucker for romance. But I just don't really care about like Matthew or Anna that much at all. And I feel like it's just because I've had no time to get to know them at all. And I'm kind of expected to love them because I know their parents from the other series. Or, I mean, I don't know if she expected us to fall in love with the characters by page like 223, but I feel like I should be caring about these characters more than I actually do, and I'm just having a really hard time kind of like really caring about this story when I have very little attachment to the characters, and I think that's a big reading block for me. But I'm gonna try to power through, and I'm gonna try to finish it tonight and tomorrow. So that does mean I have to do kind of a significant amount of reading compared to the reading I have been doing, but I think I can do it, and hopefully if I read it in big chunks, I'll start to really dive into the story and develop more feelings for the characters. I was talking about Cordelia and James last time and them being endgame, and the more you read, the more obvious it becomes, because in almost every flashback James has, he's thinking about Cordelia, and even while he's kind of forming his friendship with Grace, he's like thinking about Cordelia and imagining her in kind of his future. And so I definitely think that it's endgame. Like, I feel like not so subtle foreshadowing. The one thing that I am interested to see is like who else kind of couples up, because it is a Cassandra Clare book, so there's not going to be just one main romance. There's obviously going to be a little bit more, and I do feel like I remember reading something about like multiple engagements. Maybe that's in the next book, I don't know, but I do feel like there will be other romances, so I'm kind of excited to see like who pairs up with who. But again, I kind of don't care about the characters that much yet, so also, you know, those are kind of my main thoughts, to be honest. I don't really have anything to say, to be honest, because I just feel like I don't care that much, so, you know. But I'll update you maybe even later tonight if I get a good chunk of the way through. So, hey, so I haven't read much. It's currently Saturday night, and I'm definitely going to try to finish tonight and tomorrow. I know I said I would try to finish by tonight, but I don't think that's going to happen because I slept in for a really long time, and then I didn't read a lot during the day, so I haven't gotten much progress. But I'm basically on page 238, which I know not very far, but I just read this scene where Thomas is like flashing back to his time in Paris with Alistair, and I just had to share my thoughts. Like, well, there's not much to say, but the point is that I'm pretty sure she's setting up Thomas and Alistair as a couple, and I didn't see that coming, but I'm interested to see where it goes, and I'm interested to see kind of who else gets together. I think the more I read, the more I do start to care about the characters, but I still feel like there are just like a lot of characters to keep track of. But anyways, I'll update you guys when I'm further along. Okay, so I'm on page 415, which I'm proud of. And it's basically the part where they've just fought the Manticore demon and Lucy is like waking up. And I just had this revelation. Like, I think Lucy's power is the ability to control ghosts, because like she was able to force like that warlock dude, his ghost, to like tell them about who paid him to summon the demon. Or she didn't actually do that, but she got him to talk, and then I think she's the one who forced all the ghosts to save Cordelia from the river. It's just a hypothesis, but that's what I'm thinking. I'm also really curious because they keep talking about like Matthew and some like dark secret or whatever he has, and I really want to know what it is, and like his like childhood crush on Lucy, how it's like they keep like alluding to it being something else, but like I'm not really sure what it is, and I really want to know. Like, I'm really curious. I don't really have much else to say other than that. I'm upset Barbara died, but to be honest, I didn't know her that well, so I wasn't that upset. But I do feel bad for Thomas, and I am starting to like really care for the characters more, I feel like, especially because I've been reading for like the past 200 pages straight. Like, I've been more immersed in the world than I was before, which has been really nice. But yeah, anyways, I'll keep updating you guys. I might even finish tonight, but we'll see because I'm kind of tired and it's kind of late. So yeah. Okay, so it hasn't been long since my last update. I'm on page 433, but I had some thoughts. First of all, I was right. Her power is tied to the dead. And second, I'm getting kind of some romantic vibes between Jessie and Lucy. I've kind of been having them the entire book, but I feel like they're really solidified when he was talking about giving up his last breath to like help her if she were drowning. But I don't really know how that would work because he's obviously dead, but I am wondering if in the later books maybe he will come back and they might end up together. I don't know. But also, apparently, Matthew committed murder, so I want to know who he killed really badly. But I don't know why, like, I understand murder's a horrible crime, but I don't understand why he wouldn't want to tell anybody or why he would, like, just, why I would hang on him so much. I mean, obviously, he would have a guilty conscience, but I don't know. I just feel like it must have been someone important or something like really bad that he did, because otherwise I feel like it wouldn't have affected him so severely, or he wouldn't feel like he couldn't tell his like parabatai or whatever. So anyways, yeah. Okay, so I'm on page 452, and they're in the part where they're like in the city of bones, and they're like in the sick room with all of the people, and they're like chanting James' name, which is super creepy. But I'm thinking that it definitely has something to do with who his grandfather is, and I have a feeling that if we don't find out in this book, we're gonna find out later in the series who James's grandfather is, like the demon. And I feel like for some reason his power has something to do with it, and like his grandfather wants him or something, and that's like the whole reason for this. But I mean, like, that's kind of what they're basically saying right now, but like I want to know more, so I'm gonna read. Okay, so it's Sunday night, and I finally finished Chain of Gold! Woo! So I know I talked about finishing it Saturday, so it's like a little bit later than I wanted to, and definitely a lot later from when I originally thought I was gonna finish Chain of Gold, but I'm pleased that I finally did. So I'm gonna kind of talk to you about like my ending thoughts. The last time I talked to you, I have no idea where I was, but I ended up reading a lot, like a good chunk last night, and I had maybe like 100 or less than 100 pages to go to read today. I feel like the main thing that I have to kind of address is like how I felt about the story in the beginning, and kind of how I felt like I wasn't thriving with like all of the characters that were thrown at us at the beginning. And I definitely feel like she dumped a bunch of characters on us immediately when we went to the ball, and I know it was kind of important to the plot because we needed kind of like non-essential characters to get like injured by the demons and to like end up in the infirmary and stuff like that. But I do feel like it made it difficult, especially in the beginning, to really connect. But I feel like as the book kind of went on, we really narrowed our focus to like 6 main characters, and then kind of even further than that. I would say the 6 main characters are like definitely Thomas, Matthew, Christopher, James, Lucy, and Cordelia, and then kind of smaller than that, like we didn't really hear much from Christopher's perspective, even though he was kind of in the group. Then we didn't really hear much from Thomas. We just got like that one excerpt with Alistair and Paris, which, side note, I definitely think Thomas and Alistair are endgame. Like, I know that right now they're not on good terms because like Matthew exposed what Alistair said at the academy, and I definitely think Alistair is going to get like a redemption arc, and I feel like it's going to take him some time and effort, but I feel like they're going to end up together. Like, that's just the vibe I get. But I mean, like, I could be wrong, but I don't think I am. Anyways, so then kind of further than that, we got Matthew's perspective kind of, but I would say it wasn't really central. I feel like the main narrators throughout the story were definitely Cordelia, Lucy, and James. So I definitely feel like narrowing in on specific characters really helped me connect with the story and connect with the characters, and I feel like that's really important for me specifically because as a reader, I'm definitely someone who connects with the characters rather than usually the plot. I definitely feel like the plot is interesting, and obviously you read books for the plot, but I feel like the plot is just a method to tell a story. It's just like a tool, and the characters are really what drives it and bring like life and heart to the story and make you really fall in love with everything that's happening. I feel like characters are just so essential, and you can write a great story about great characters doing like mundane things, and I feel like it can still be amazing. Whereas like if you have horrible, boring characters, and you, even if you have an amazing plot, your story is like nothing. Like it doesn't carry that same like gravitas that like such powerful, impactful characters do. So I didn't mean to kind of go on like a tirade about that, but my point is that I do feel like focusing in on those main characters drew me to the story and really helped me end up really enjoying it, because I will be honest, I really care about our main characters, like especially Cordelia, James, and Lucy. Like I love them to pieces. I don't think they're like my favorite characters of all time, and I definitely think more books in this series will help me connect with them even more. I do think that there are other books that have kind of drawn me to their characters more in one book than this necessarily has, and I think some of it has to do with like how I read it, like so spread out, and then also just because so many characters were thrown at me in the beginning, and also I don't know, I didn't get as much depth from these characters as I have gotten from like some other characters, or maybe I just haven't connected with them as much. But I just like I really love them. So I think that's kind of how I'm gonna format the rest of my talk, is just mostly talking about like the characters and kind of going in order. I'm gonna talk about James first because I feel like he was very central to the plot. I was a little bit surprised because kind of when that whole thing went down with Belius and he was like, oh, it's always been about James, it did make the book feel very James-centric and very like much like, whoa, the world revolves around James, and like why didn't Belius try to do anything with like his direct daughter? Like why wasn't he involved with her? Or like why is he focusing so much on James when Lucy is right there? Because I do feel like that tends to happen a lot in this book. Like people are like, oh, James, the true Herondale, and like they kind of ignore Lucy as a Herondale. Like I understand that she's a girl, but I don't feel like that really should affect much of anything. Anyways, I do really adore James as a character. I do feel like, yeah, I am curious to see kind of what happens to him and Cordelia and how their relationship kind of evolves, because I love their relationship so much. I think it's so sweet. I understand that James isn't really in the right mindset right now, but I definitely think it's just because of the bracelet. And kind of a perfect segue, I have to talk about Grace, obviously, and I do wonder like how nefarious Grace is and how much she knew, because my theory is definitely that the bracelet is enchanted somehow, and in some ways the bracelet kind of attracts the wearer to Grace, like somehow it's tied to her, and then somehow it also leaves James unprotected somehow, because that's what Belius was mentioning, or Bellius, I don't know how to say his name, but the demon guy. I know that it's obviously important to his kind of nefarious plot, and so I wonder like kind of what role it will play in the future. And what I have to wonder regarding that is like how much Grace knew, like, because if she knew about like the bracelet's powers all along, I have to wonder, like, when she initially gave the bracelet to James, did she know what she was doing, or did she only discover like what she was doing later on when she gave James the bracelet a second time? Because I think both opportunities like that, those were her opportunities to kind of learn what the bracelet was, and I think at least by now she definitely knows its role, like its power. And so I wonder like how much of it was her, how much of it was Tatiana, if she's been plotting this from the beginning, because in the beginning of the story, when James is like first meeting up with Grace is like, oh, it's okay, you're in love with Cordelia, but then she gives him the bracelet and we don't see any other flashbacks like after that, but we know that he falls in love with Grace, and that's when they come to their understanding, and that's when they've been writing all these letters. And so I have to wonder if the bracelet is what made him fall in love with Grace in the first place, and if she knew that from the beginning, and if she asked him to get the bracelet knowing that he would fall in love with her because that's what she wanted, or if she genuinely just wanted her bracelet and it was kind of like a side effect that she didn't know about, and then the second time she knew, like when she finally figured it out, she gave it back to him because she realized that that was like an important part of the plan or whatever. Yes, Tatiana's definitely like evil and very plotty and cunning. I do not really understand why she's so bitter about everything. Like, I understand she suffered a great deal, but I do feel like she's kind of insane. She's like, you know, crazy. But kind of moving on from James, definitely Cordelia. I love Cordelia so much. She's so precious. I just feel like she's so like mature, and kind of speaking of that, I do get the vibe that Lucy is like a little bit less mature than her. I don't know why. Like, I understand that like Lucy and James have an age difference, so maybe Cassandra was trying to kind of like portray Lucy and James's age difference a little bit by like making her a little bit less mature, but I'm not sure if she really intended that. That's just kind of the vibe overall that I get. And I know I mentioned this earlier, but I still definitely think Lucy and Jesse are going to end up together. I found the family tree that they have online that Cassandra Clare made has Lucy and Jesse ending up together. I know that it was like the family tree is supposedly intentionally misleading, but I don't know. I have a feeling that they're going to find a way to bring Jesse back somehow, and he's going to end up with Lucy. Like, I'm quite sure that's what's going to happen. And again, I wonder what role Grace has to play in all this, because obviously she wants her brother back, but is she kind of also plotting with Tatiana? Like, does Tatiana's kind of like deal with Bellius like have something to do with bringing Jesse back? Like, I don't know. How will him not having his last breath affect like his life and his ability to be brought back? Like, I don't know. So, all very interesting questions to ponder. Other than that, I don't have too many like major things to talk about. I want to know kind of who Matthew murdered and kind of his whole like tragic backstory, and I'm sure we're going to learn about it, but I'm very intrigued by that. To be honest, that's kind of it. I don't feel like we really got time to bond that much with Christopher, and even though we got some narration from Anna, I'm not that attached to her as a character, although I do think she and Adrienne are endgame for sure. So we shall see what happens in the future, and hopefully I will be coming to you guys next year with like, I think it's Chain of Iron, the next book. So hopefully I'll be coming to you with that vlog next year, and I'm interested to see what kind of happens and how the story unfolds. Again, I really enjoyed that it was very like character based. And oh, something that I forgot to mention was that I did find the climax like a little bit underwhelming, to be honest. Like, his whole scene with the Manticore and then going into the Shadow Realm and like confronting his grandfather and stuff like that, like that was great and all, but I don't know, it just felt very brief and kind of, it was like over very quickly. And I understand that like we're building up to the next book. This book is contained within itself, but like it's also like part of a much bigger story, but I did feel like a little bit underwhelmed by that. But again, like, I'm not complaining too much because what I came for was the characters. What I stayed for was the characters. The plot was always kind of secondary to me anyway, so that wasn't such a big deal. I just kind of had to note that. But other than that, I think I'm gonna go ahead and sign off. I'm excited to pick up some more books because it just put me in such a mood to read. This book just gave me like butterflies at the end. It makes me want to read Charles Dickens. Like, and I really love the historical setting. I think I'm definitely going to have to pick up more like historical fiction soon, because this, like, I don't know, historical fiction is just so romantic for some reason. Like, I don't know what it is, but it just is that way. But anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you managed to stick around to the end, I know it wasn't like the most interesting vlog ever, but I was excited to kind of be able to share with you my more spoilery thoughts and like actually delve into like what's actually happening in the book rather than like talking more generally. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you guys with another video very soon.